Hey folks, it's Chris Thoreau here, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about germination tests in the context of determining soak time for your crops. So one of the questions I see on a lot of forums, I get a lot in consults, and it's a general people question asked is how long to soak seeds for certain crops? And it's a bit of a trick question because even within specific crops, that soak time may vary with different lots. And the example I always use is sunflower. So actually, I'm going to give two examples, both sunflower and pea. They're crops I've grown a lot of. And the first sunflower seed I bought, I soaked it overnight. I would sow it in the morning, and we always got these beautiful crops. And I had that seed for about a year and a half. Second, next batch I got, tried the same thing, and for some reason it just didn't grow very well. And it took me a while to realize that, oh, I should change my soak time. And we went from an overnight soak to a 2-hour soak, and that seed did great. So what I've learned with different batches is if I get a new lot of seed in, I always start with my existing method. If I've been soaking for 2 hours, I'll continue to soak for 2 hours. If I've been soaking overnight, I'll continue to soak overnight. But if I see an issue with my first crop, then the first thing I think about is my soaking time. So this is something that I think is really important because I see a lot of people giving sort of blanket answers to that question about how long should you soak seed, and it is it's quite variable. So that's the first aspect of that. The second part of that is how do you determine this? How do you best determine your soak time? And the way to there's quick ways and there's slow ways to do it. And the slow way is just every batch try something different, and that's very slow, very tedious. So I'm going to talk about one of the quick ways to do it, and then talk a little bit about germination tests in general. So if you followed some of my posts late last year, and Happy New Year, by the way, I think you're allowed to say that until about the 15th of January, so it's my last opportunity. And I haven't done any posting since because I've been too busy sleeping. But one of the places I left off with last year was I've got this spelt seed, and I've not been getting great germination on it. And I tried 20-minute soak, I tried an hour soak, I think I tried a 2-hour soak, and then I did a really long overnight soak that ended up being too long. It ended up being like a 15-hour soak, and none of those really gave me a good result. And so as I go into the new year, I want to do a more efficient way to do a test here. So what I'm going to do is use small samples of seed, and I'm not going to do it in soil. I'm really just going to do a germination test. Now, a true germination test for most crops has a very standardized method, and those are internationally recognized. So if I wanted to sell a seed crop, for example, I would have to use a specific method for that crop, document it in real time, step by step, so that's all there, and then display my results. So if I just do a germination test on some paper towel and count everything afterwards, it's not really valid because it hasn't followed a methodology. I'm not going to go into that detail here, but it's an important thing to know that germinating something in a germination chamber is different than germinating it on top of your fridge or in a boot tray with a towel. But if you don't have access to more advanced equipment, which most people don't, and you don't have a lot of time, you can just use a basic method. So our basic method is we want to determine soak time for spelt seed. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to soak spelt seed for different lengths of time. So I've got 5 samples here. I've got a teaspoon of seed in each. I don't care about the exact number of seeds because I'm just going to do a visual look. Most of you will know that just from looking at a crop, you can tell it's germination. A true germination test, you would count every seed, you would count them at different points in the process, and it's actually quite labor intensive. So what we're going to do is a visual evaluation of these germinations. So I have a tablespoon in each. I have one that's going to soak for 8 hours, 6 hours, 4 hours, 2 hours, and 1 hour. I started the 8-hour one 3.5 hours ago. I started this one an hour and a half ago. So this one I got started in a little bit. So I'm basically starting these in a way that at midnight today, I will sow everything at the same time. So everything is getting sown at the same time. I'm using the same amount of water in each, and I'm using sort of a lukewarm water. So what I'm trying to do is make things as consistent as possible. I don't want to do the 8-hour with warm water, the 6-hour with cold water, the 4-hour with just a little bit of water. You want to try to get everything as consistent as possible. The other thing I haven't done, but if you really want to make sure you're getting things accurate, and if you've seen some of my original videos from 2008, is you'll want to do replicates, which means I should actually be doing 2 at 8 hours, 2 at 6 hours, and so on. And I would probably place them on my shelving. I would place maybe one up here, and I would place one down here. Because that way we're considering the environment in our conditions. And if things don't do well, is it soak time, or is it because it's too hot or too cold somewhere? So these are things to consider. Once again, I'm just going to do one of each because I know my conditions are pretty consistent here, and I have limited space and I have very limited patience. So I'm going to do that. So what's going to happen, I've got these soaking already. This one's going to get soaked in a bit. At midnight, I'll take each of these and I'll place them and spread them out on the cloth here. So my cloth is essentially my growing medium. And the idea of the cloth here is basically to keep them in the dark and to keep the seeds moist. You can use paper towel. You can use special paper that is actually made just for germination, which really helps hold the water and gives you better results. But I know from experience, I've had pretty good results with just a cloth like this. I'm going to do them in my tray here, which is the tray you might recognize that I actually do my watering in when I want to water from beneath. And once my seeds are on here, I'll put a little label on them so I know it's 8, 6, 4, 2, and 1 hour soak. I will cover them up, and then I'll water this and I'll keep this moist. Now I don't want this sitting in water. I'm going to water it. I'm going to tip this up and drain all the excess water off so this just stays nice and damp. I'm not going to touch this for about 3 days, but after 3 days I'm going to start taking a look because I know it's going to start germinating. And then basically every day from then on, I'm going to start looking and seeing how things are doing. And there's 2 things I'm looking for, really. I'm looking for what is the general rate of germination, which means if I have 100 seeds, how many are germinating? Once again, you could do that as a count, but I'm just going to do it visually. The second thing we're looking at is how vigorous is it? So vigor testing is different from germination testing. Vigor is sort of germination plus speed of growth. So that's the second thing I'm looking at. And those are the 2 key things. The third thing, in a sense, might be, how are they doing over time? Is the 2-hour one starting off slow and then actually getting better? Or is one starting off really good and then slowing down? So just noticing things like that will help you determine which soak might be the best for you. Just to cover a reason around soak time. So there's one principle I talk about a lot in soak time, and that is always try to use the minimum soak time to get the maximum result or the optimum result. I've just found logistically in my systems that the less time something spends soaking, the less I have to think about it. For me to have to do something on Sunday night and then sow it on Monday morning, logistically there's a lot to manage there. Whereas if I'm somewhere Monday morning and I soak it at 10 o'clock and then I sow it at 2 o'clock, I'm going to do stuff in the interval, so I'm not sort of waiting. There's less to coordinate. The overnight soak actually can logistically be a bit of a headache. Same thing in a home environment. I don't want to, if I'm out for the night, it's like, oh, do I need to go home to soak my seeds? Like, there's just a lot of things to consider. So if it is a longer soak you need, I would recommend soaking in the morning and then sowing in the evening, for example. That's what's probably going to work out best. If it's sort of a mid-range soak, then I would look at soaking, early evening and sowing late evening, so something like that. So there's lots of things to consider in this. So what I'll do over the week is I will get this germ test going, and then we'll probably within 3 days or so take a look at see things how we're doing, do a little video on that as well. I do see there's still a few folks there. If you happen to have a question because I haven't covered something, type it in and we'll take a look. Just a recap here, this spelt seed, and I'm a little nervous about it because what I usually say is I'm trying to buy my seed from a reliable source, and so if something is wrong with the seed, it's probably my fault, or if something's wrong with the germination. Now, this is a spelt seed I got from Mums. I've bought most of my seed there over the past 10 years and have had pretty consistent results. It's my first time doing spelt, so there might be just a little idiosyncrasy about it, but this is how I get to know this crop a little bit better. I do have some wheatgrass seed, and I might do some comparisons with that. But what I'm just doing is sort of getting to understand this specific crop, and what I'm doing is using the methodologies that I've developed with other crops in order to do that. So this is a bit of a quick overview about understanding germination tests and understanding soak time. And just a reminder that there's really there's no blanket answers to soak time. You need to think about this on a lot by lot basis with seed. And so it is a good thing to sort of keep in mind this as you bring a new lot of seed in. It might be something you might also ask your seed supplier. So I know with this batch of sunflower seeds that Mums actually recommended you soak it for longer. So that's when you get that sort of information from your supplier. First of all, it tells you that they're spending some time with the seed, and they're doing those tests, and that's something you should be looking for in a seed supplier, someone who puts that time in. Others just buy the seed, repack it, and sell it. So that's quite important. And the other thing, which I've talked about before, is understanding the effect of water temperature. And as a general rule, a warmer water is going to cause the seed to germinate a little better. It probably does a better job of sort of softening the coat and allowing the seed to get, the water to get absorbed or imbibed into the seed. This was fairly lukewarm water, which now is getting fairly cold, but I'm still at least room temperature, so should still get some pretty consistent results. So that's the overview on germination tests and soak time with spelt seed. And yeah, hopefully we get some good and interesting results and can report back and give you some more tips on how to do this more efficiently. All right.